It's been about a month since Resident Evil Requiem has come out now, and it enjoyed a very successful launch, selling over 6 million copies in a record amount of time. There is a lot of excitement around this game. Speaking from my own experience, just looking at my friends, family, and acquaintances. A couple of my friends even had the motivation to be introduced to the franchise after seeing Requiem and how cool it looks. I beat the game many times with over 120 hours in it already, and I just adore it. We recently got an announcement as well about more content coming to the game, and I really hope that it's gonna live up to expectations. Moving past that, if the title doesn't give it away already, this video will contain major endgame spoilers, so go into this at your own risk. Now, when the introduction's out of the way, today I wanted to discuss a very specific topic that mostly gets revealed towards the end of the game, but has hints and clues relating to it all over the game. We are going to talk about Spencer's motivations behind the big reveal that they've shown us with him. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I find the discourse surrounding it to be very fascinating, because not only did it spark discussions all over the community, but it does so in a way where it feels like everyone understood something else completely. So just to quickly recap the relevant part, towards the very end, Grace comes across a video recording of her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, interviewing a man whose history is deeply rooted in the Resident Evil franchise, Oswald E. Spencer. He was the owner of the mansion we go through in Resident Evil 1, and he was also one of the founders for the Umbrella Corporation, which, as we all know, is one of the most evil entities we know about in the series. Spencer himself is far from a saint. This guy used his power and influence to conduct experiments on human beings and animals to create bioweapons. Going back to the interview, in it, Spencer does something that caught many people off guard. He shows a shred of humanity after all the deaths that he contributed to. He mentions feeling guilt and wanting to do at least one good thing while he can. So what he does is bring in baby Grace, and he entrusted her to Alyssa. Now, I've seen people who are so confident that they fully understood everything there is about not just Spencer, but other aspects of the story. And likewise, I've seen a lot of confusion or uncertainty about the same parts. The intriguing part is that even when I saw the reasoning behind people who are confident about their understanding, what they had to say had some holes, or they weren't taking into account some things that the story brought up. But I'm also going to be upfront. I am not claiming that I know the answers to every question that this story raises, but ever since the game's launch, I've come across a lot of discussions, videos, arguments about what really happened and what is true. I'll try to raise some facts, but the main goal of this video is to raise points that may be worth considering even if we think we know the answer. Because here's how I'm gonna kick things off. Spencer's research was not complete. Are we all cool with that? Just to say it again, Spencer's research was incomplete. This is mentioned at the very end of the game in the good ending. Victor points it out to Zeno when they're both trying to figure out where they went wrong with what they believed about Grace. This by itself can be used as a scapegoat for so many of the vague details of the story. But at the same time, can Victor's words be trusted here? Or is this just a part of his delusional speech after finding out the nature of Elpis? You're gonna find yourself questioning what's true multiple times, by the way. A lot of the pieces of information we have come from individual statements, and sometimes you have to question the validity of said statements. Hell, page 56 of Grace's report, which is unlockable after you beat the game, states that Spencer was senile in his later years. And yet, even with this, we have more questions. When did he start becoming senile? How much of what he says is really what he wants to say, and how much of it is just him being senile? Was he senile during the interview with Alyssa Ashcroft? When was the interview that she had with him? I feel like the timing of the interview matters quite a bit, and we don't know when that happens. Here's some things we know for sure, supported by Grace's report. Page 7 mentions that according to court records, his ultimate goal was to bring about the viral evolution of the human race, and in order to do that, he conducted virus research and used illegal and inhumane methods in the process. Page 6 mentions that the horrors of the Second World War and the dread of the Cold War was a big motivation for Spencer in doing what he did. He was sick of seeing history repeat itself with wars and took it upon himself to change humanity. So he founded Umbrella with James Marcus and Edward Ashford in 1968. And to sum up some of what the report says, Umbrella had messy management from the get-go, Even the founders basically had strong disagreements on how to run things. James Marcus was the one responsible for the creation of the T-virus, and Spencer had him demoted and took over his research. The Ark is a completely new addition that came with RE9, but they tried to place it in the long-standing history of the franchise, and say that Spencer had plans for it since basically before the Raccoon City outbreak. Same goes for the Connections, a mysterious group introduced with Resident Evil 7, now apparently having history that dates long before the Raccoon City incident. But those are a topic for another time. Spencer had enemies within and outside of Umbrella that he kept track of and disposed of. Long story short, even though Resident Evil 9 comes from left field to show us remorse from Spencer, they still try to convey that he was not a good person at all. So it's only natural for us to ask the following. Was Spencer lying when he said Grace is completely normal? Did Spencer truly feel regret, or was he trying to be petty and outsmart his competition? How much of what we're told about Spencer is the truth even? We know for a fact that thanks to Resident Evil 9 basically retconning this point, Raccoon City was not blown up because of the zombie outbreak getting out of hand. It was to hide Elpis and keep away competition. Zeno mentions as much in one cutscene with Grace. The competition in question is mentioned in page 29 of Grace's report. Trisel, who we first see in Resident Evil 5, the HCF, who are first heard of in Resident Evil Code Veronica, the family, that I believe are first heard of in Resident Evil 6, and last but not least, Umbrella itself. Now, you might be thinking that Zeno himself is not a reliable source of information given that he made a mistake that cost his life, but we know for a fact that the reason behind bombing Raccoon City is the truth, and he brought that up. In the Ark, you find an email where there's an exchange between a side called the Defense and another side called KD. It's safe to assume that the Defense might just be referring to someone from the US Department of Defense, but this mysterious KD, who I believe we're not yet meant to know who they are, is the one that gives the order to wipe out Raccoon City. The Defense notably mentions that they don't have presidential authorization yet, but KD persuades them into doing it regardless. Now, given where you find this file, I think it's concrete proof of why the city was blown up. It was because of Elpis after all. Like, apparently this thing was so valuable that they just blew the whole city up. You spend a lot of time in this game not knowing what exactly is Elpis, and why they had to blow up the entire city for it. Zeno, in one cutscene, tells Grace that it's a virus that allows you to control the minds of others, which obviously turned out to be a big lie. Information about the true nature of Elpis was very limited, but page 30 of Grace's report mentions that the only piece of information that got leaked was that it had the power to mess with the military balance of the world, and that's it. Apparently that's all that anyone knew. Then page 14 of the same report shows a record from the Ark that mentions the development of Elpis as well as research into memory transfer and forced evolution. Because of this, I guess it's easy to see why someone like Zeno thought it might be a mind control virus, but at the same time, injecting it into himself immediately was a really reckless gamble that led to his death. Maybe we still don't have the full picture as to why the competition thought it's a mind control virus, or maybe I'm missing something. And if I am, please do tell me about it in the comments. Multiple times in Resident Evil 9, Elpis is brought up as a source of hope and redemption, being an antiviral drug that can reverse viruses. However, Victor brings up an interesting point, that it's a tool for more chaotic purposes, as in theory, it could be used to combat bioweapons. However, it's not crazy to think that Victor is too absorbed in his admiration for Spencer that he has to find a way to excuse his own inhumane research and atrocities. And yet, page 56 of the report explicitly mentions that despite everything we've seen and everything we know, Spencer's true intentions behind developing Elpis are unknown. I feel like just the fact that they mentioned this specifically is reason for us to raise an eyebrow. Call me paranoid, but if Spencer's intentions are as noble as he made it seem in the interview, they wouldn't need to mention this line at all. But they want players to discuss, they want them to debate, be unsure, and leave some things up for interpretation. And I love this. I don't think it's impossible for him to have had other reasons for making Elpis. Let's go back to something else we mentioned earlier. Grace. Spencer said that she's completely normal. Alyssa specifically asked whether she was one of his test subjects, and he denied that. Whether or not this is a lie, I feel like this is another major point of discussion. If Grace is in no way special, then how did she get bit at the beginning of the game only for her to not transform into a zombie? My personal explanation was that maybe after being kidnapped by Victor that he administered something to her to keep her from turning. After all, he still needed her at the time. But I'm not sure how much that argument would hold up. I'm about to reference a pretty old promotional documentary from like 2002, but according to something called Wesker's Report 2, Part 2, Albert Wesker himself mentions in this report that about 10% of the population has a natural immunity to the T-virus. So, does Grace happen to have that immunity? If so, Resident Evil 9 does not mention that whatsoever, or at least not in your face. There's a document titled Spencer's Research 2 that you find in the game that talks about his experimentation with memory transfer through blood. According to him, blood is the medium of memory. It's where it's stored, apparently. But hypothetically, for a successful transfer to happen, they need an individual that can withstand the toxicity of the mutated T-virus that we see in this game, while also preserving their intelligence. How convenient is it that Grace just seems to be immune to it? So, once again, was he lying to Alyssa when he said that Grace is not a test subject of his? We're talking about one of the most evil figures in the whole franchise. It's really not crazy that a bunch of what he says is just lies, especially given how bitter he seems towards any competition. And that's not even mentioning that his mind seems to be deteriorating at that point of time. There's a file called Letter from Patrick. Patrick is Spencer's personal butler, and in this file, he addresses Alyssa Ashcroft. He says that Spencer wrote a will, and a lot of it is unintelligible. Aside from this one small paragraph, I designate Alyssa Ashcroft as the guardian of my adopted daughter, Grace. She will be safe in her care. Oswald E. Spencer. Besides Spencer himself saying that she is normal, Victor at the end of the game does say that there is no connection between Emily and Grace. So she's likely not involved in all of that cloning business. I'm gonna guess that they were just looking for one of those T-virus immune people, and Grace might have been one of the candidates that they came across. The Spencer's Research 2 note does say that they are gonna start looking for viable subjects with that immunity, but maybe after he got her, he decided that he just wanted her to have a normal life, after he led a life full of backstabbing, deceit, and corruption. A small shred of redemption in a sea of evil deeds. I just want to salute Capcom for either intentionally or maybe even unintentionally coming up with probably one of the most debate-sparking plot points in the whole franchise. A lot of the story beats in Resident Evil are very straightforward, and there's not too much room for speculation or debate. So this was a very welcome addition. Maybe the coming DLC will also add some context, who knows. But for the time being, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and watching this. I hope you found this video to be interesting or entertaining, and if you guys have any points to raise or any corrections you have, please feel free to leave a comment. Now you guys, take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye now.